What would you say if I were to tell you that an elite group of international billionaires were plotting to usurp political discourse in the United States, take control of our means of communication, and try and implement their version of American democracy? You would say, surely you're nuts. There's no such cabal of elites and billionaires controlling everything. And you'd be completely right, unless you're talking about Elon Musk. Oh, well, in that instance, there is a shadow crew of billionaires who are bending the Tesla CEO's ear and trying to put him in control of these systems to reshape political discourse in this country as to how they see fit. Oh, this is from the Wall Street Journal, talking about the shadow crew who encouraged Elon Musk's Twitter takeover. I think it's funny that if it's Elon Musk or Peter Thiel, it's a grand conspiracy. But if you talk about, I don't know, George Soros, who does spend tons of money in politics, it's a conspiracy theory. The reason it's a conspiracy theory is because only one side has control of the institutions. So perhaps we, who believe in a counter narrative, should be happy that billionaires are taking over. Not so much. There's definitely a lot of good happening with Elon Musk, and I think it's great that he wants to bring back free speech and have a good time on social media, but there are some pitfalls. In fact, the Democrats are actually kind of happy about what's going on. They've got a new boogeyman, Elon Musk. These billionaires, all of a sudden CNN and these other outlets are complaining about how we need to regulate speech and we can't let these billionaires just take over, allowing Democrats to once again try to realign against private industry. Because the longest time, as these industries were in their pocket, they were saying, it's a private company that can do what they want. But now that Elon Musk steps in, oh, here we go. It's a shadow crew of elites who are trying to control public discourse. The Democrats are hopeful. Elon Musk is going to allow them to create a boogeyman, so as we move into the midterms, they've got a villain. But they're also hoping that Elon Musk brings Donald Trump back. And it seems like he probably will. But of course, Donald Trump says he's not going to come back to Twitter, and he's going to stick around and stay over at Truth Social. The truth really is, the economy is really bad. Joe Biden is currently under fire for laughing. Trevor Noah told a joke about the president's failed first year. And he said, when you got into office, things started to look up. Gas is up, rent is up, food prices are up. And then Joe Biden laughs. And to be fair, I don't know what Joe Biden is supposed to do in a situation like that. You got to roll with the punches. But yeah, it is really bad. So they definitely need to deflect. Things are getting way worse. So we have this story. And I want to explore what this shadow crew really is. But it's also, according to Politico, they've run this story. Biden world wants to make the midterms more about Trump and hope that Elon Musk will help. I think that's going to play a role. I think we're going to see the censorship. And I think we need to break down exactly why. And the reality is, diesel prices are at an all-time high. The head of, a U.S. aid administrator says never let a good crisis go to waste when referencing the food shortages that are coming. Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste. While they may have lost control of Twitter, which was effectively serving as their disinformation governance board, they launched a disinformation governance board. So I think we need to take into consideration the powerful political interests behind what Elon Musk is doing. We'll take a look at this conspiracy theory. I want to talk to you about why do we tolerate conspiracy theories now, but not about anybody on the left? These powerful Democrat, look, the Clinton Foundation, the donations they took, and George Soros, I think, is an obvious one. Why is that not allowed? Perhaps if the shadow crew, as it's called, actually does get a foothold in cultural institutions, maybe then we'll be able to actually discuss who's really running the show, be it this shadow crew or other special interests. And then we can talk about why things are really getting bad. Let's do that. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member if you would like to support the work I am doing here and the work of our journalists. As a member, you'll get exclusive access to segments from the Timcast IRL podcast that go up Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. We have them here at timcast.com. You can't find them anywhere else. You'll also be keeping our journalists employed and keeping the mission going. Many of you may have seen we got a billboard in Times Square just this past week or so, and boy, did that ruffle some feathers. We're going to do more. Culture jamming as marketing, challenging the institutions, calling out the corrupt, and, trying to make a difference by bringing real news and not narrative to all of you. If that is something good and you like that, become a member right now. But don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and let's talk about this shadow crew. Well, I can sit here and tell you I think it's a good thing that Elon Musk is buying Twitter. I can also warn you about those who are involved. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. They may have done some pretty good things. But don't just sit back and praise these guys like they're going to save you from everything. They've got their interests as well. These are the guys who started PayPal. PayPal is banning people who are challenging U.S. foreign policy and the narrative as well. Now, perhaps they're just not involved in PayPal, but look at the things they build. It could be that these institutions have been seized by the left and maybe they'll take them back. Or it could be that these gentlemen plant these seeds which eventually go sour. Considering that Twitter already long went sour, I don't see how much worse it could get. But here's the story from the Wall Street Journal. Of course, Elon Musk has addressed this, and I think the better take comes from one of the reporters on this story. But the Wall Street Journal says, the shadow crew who encouraged Elon Musk's Twitter takeover, behind the scenes fellow billionaires and internet provocateurs, bent Tesla CEO's ear. They say, as Elon Musk's crusade against Twitter escalated from a war of words to a full-on takeover, he was egged on behind the scenes by a mix of voices from fellow billionaires to internet trolls, with their own beefs with the social media platform. In Mr. Musk, a serial entrepreneur with a hard Twitter habit, these men found a vessel for pent-up animosity over the company's content moderation and management. One of them had a very personal stake. Twitter's co-founder and former chief executive Jack Dorsey, who resigned last year under pressure, was whispering in Mr. Musk's ear that Twitter should be a private company. People familiar with the matter say, now that is where things get particularly interesting, my friends. A conspiracy! Jack Dorsey had the opportunity to do so much and he didn't, nor did he explain why he wouldn't. Certainly he just comes out and says, well, I wish I could say it, but I can't. So many things left unsaid that can't be said. Sure, Jack. Look, I'm willing to entertain a conversation with you at any point, but when you keep saying you want to do things and you won't do them, I question whether or not you really want to do them. Perhaps you could come out and say, I would like X to happen, but the board will not allow it. Maybe it really is that simple. I'd love to hear an explanation. How about you give one? To be fair, I try to be fair. Maybe after the sale is done, Jack Dorsey will come out and just say a whole bunch of stuff. I'd love to sit down and talk with Elon and Jack. I don't think they're going to want to in the midst of this deal. I think many people should understand this too. Yeah, look, there are people who you might like, who might believe in free speech, who are not going to come on my show and talk to me because I'm going to ask them tough questions. I'm not going to completely agree with them. I'm not going to just say, yes, you're right, for sure. I'll push back where pushback needs to happen. They're going to say Mr. Musk declined to be interviewed, and it isn't clear whether he took any of their advice. People who have spoken to him and his team recently say Mr. Musk remains dismayed that former President Trump is still barred from the platform. Mike Cernovich has an interesting point about this. And that's why I want to, approach this from a kind of nuanced position. Mike Cernovich tweeted in November of 2021, on principle, Trump should be on Twitter. In reality, his presence helps the Democrats. That's why Twitter will find a way to rewrite a policy to allow him back. Interesting. Maybe they won't. Maybe Elon Musk will come back on the platform, unban Donald Trump, and give the Democrats a last-minute narrative. Cernovich said something about not having Trump back on the platform. I can't remember exactly what he said, and that tweet was from November. But I think there's an interesting point. Maybe there is a moral victory in getting free speech on the platform. Maybe Democrats are hoping for that because they need something to rail against. The Wall Street Journal goes on to say, leaning libertarian. Before and during Mr. Musk's breakneck takeover of Twitter, a close-knit group of libertarian-leaning activists and businessmen have been encouraging him to get involved. This group includes the so-called PayPal mafia, former executives of the online payments company, who include Musk, the investor Peter Thiel, and entrepreneur David Sachs. Okay, former. I'll take that in consideration. As well as ancillary figures like the venture capitalist Steve Jurvetson, an early Tesla investor who once served on the automaker's board, and Mr. Musk's brother Kimball, a Tesla board member, according to people familiar with this matter. Their involvement and Mr. Musk's continued willingness to hear them out may help explain one of the great mysteries of his Twitter obsession. With all the problems in the world, why has Mr. Musk decided he can alone fix it? Mr. Musk's dalliance with Twitter began uneventfully, though. Uneventfully enough, his first tweet in June 2010 announced his presence on the platform. Blah, blah, blah. I think we know where this is going. Mostly, I think it's important to talk about the people who are involved. In this tweet from Rob Copeland, who is one of the writers on the story, he says, many have asked why, out of all the things Elon Musk decided, why has Elon Musk decided Twitter is something he alone can fix? The answer we discovered is a secret crew of billionaires and misfits egging him on behind the scenes. First on tap for new Twitter under Elon Musk is getting Donald Trump back on the site. Musk's top deputy, Jared Birchall, told an associate he vehemently disagrees with censoring, especially for a sitting president. Also on his way back to the friendly confines, right-wing provocateur Charles Johnson. Johnson was promised in writing he would be reinstated very soon. Anywho, every day is a wild freaking ride when you help cover perhaps the world's richest, most fascinating, most frustrating, most contradictory, most interesting man. And there's always, as they say in the news biz, more to come. Interesting. A secret right-wing billionaire. Well, a group of billionaires. Elon Musk has responded, according to Bazinga. They say, the article was shared on Twitter by Mark Andreessen, the general partner of the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz. Musk responded by saying, my shadow crew is sick. What did Mark Andreessen say about this? I have friends. They have acquaintances. You have a shadow crew of misfits egging you on. Which is an interesting point. Elon Musk has friends. They have conversations. The way the media frames it like this is cabal of wealthy elites trying to take over is just like eye roll. I say the exact same thing about George Soros. Let me tell you guys. First, does George Soros fund a lot of these nonprofits and things like that? Oh, you betcha. Is George Soros sitting there twirling his mustache going, I'm going to take over the world? No, he's really not. He's just a rich guy flooding the zone with cash, and he is very political. But it's not. I think people see movies and their worldview is based on a more focused view of things. You know, people on the left, they say like, you know, people like me are sitting behind the scenes and Dave Rubin are going like, how can we lie to people and make more money today? When in reality, it's like I read the news and I'm like, wow, what a crazy story. I should talk about that. And that's it. The same thing is true for people like Hassan Piker. I don't think he's sitting behind the scenes going like, this story would discredit me. I better not bring it up. No, I think people like Hassan read CNN and then he's like, my opinion is shaped by CNN. And then he gets things wrong. And we disagree. I think people like George Soros think they know what's right for everybody, have the power to implement it, and then just go like, I'm going to put money here, 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 and here. I've known activists who have worked for organizations that have received Soros funding. They don't know what's going on at all. They just do things. If you flood the zone with cash, it's like dominoes falling over. Someone asked me on Timcast IR, what's the difference between a slippery slope and dominoes falling over? A slippery slope is that as the slope, curls further and further and steepens, it's a slippery slope. You are slowly sliding faster and faster. Dominoes falling over is more a reference to the machine will do this no matter what you do. So let me say it again. A slippery slope. You step onto the slippery slope and then you slide down. And as you go down, things go faster and faster. Similar, but different. Dominoes falling over, what I mean by that is it is inevitable. Whether you flick the domino or not, the dominoes are already in motion and what's to come will come. Now, there may be splitting paths, but the dominoes are going down and they're going to hit the next piece, whether you want them to or not. And that's what I think we're really seeing. It was only a matter of time. Take a look at this. This is the consideration I think we should have as we look into what's going on with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and these others. Biden world wants to make the midterms more about Trump and hopes Elon Musk helps him. The election will be either a referendum or a contrast. The president's team prefers the latter. President Joe Biden, this is from Politico, and fellow Democrats have struggled to overcome historical headwinds and worrisome economic trends in the lead up to the midterms. So aides are scheming up something else, turning the campaign into a contrast with Donald Trump and the Republicans. President Joe Biden and his team are hoping to spend the spring and summer months drawing sharp distinctions with Republicans, one in particular. They still plan to push forth revived pieces of stalled agenda, but they're also eagerly awaiting potentially explosive findings from the January 6th Select Committee and hope those discoveries can inflame a battle brewing within the GOP over Trump's former legacy and power. Yeah, let me address January 6th. No one cares. The Democrats come out and pretend they care. No one on the right cares. And regular Americans, for the most part, don't care. There have been poll after, there's been poll. And everyone's like, do you care about January 6th? And they're like, no, I can't afford gas. Well, do you want to talk about January 6th? No, I couldn't buy chicken wings the other day. That's a true story. I went to a restaurant and I said, I will have the traditional wings. And the server said, yeah, we don't have that. And I was like, you don't have wings? And they're like, no. And I was like, what do you have? And they were like, we have thighs. And I was like, you have thighs, but not wings? All right, I'll have the thighs. Thighs are amazing, by the way. But I wanted wings. All right, you can't get wings. And it's probably because they're killing all these chickens. Thighs, for a long time, they weren't in restaurants. Like, no one really cared. Now it's becoming a thing because you can't get chicken wings. Anyway, that's my point, right? I'm not going to cry about January 6th when I can't buy chicken. Biden, who has tried to pivot back towards domestic matters, while also tending to the war in Ukraine, gave a hint of the upcoming strategy on his recent West Coast swing, in which he blasted the GOP for falling under the control of far-right extremists. This ain't your father's Republican Party, said Biden, who declared, it's the MAGA party now. Come on, man. And the Republicans now are afraid to act correctly because they know they'll be primaried if they don't toe the line set by Trump and his acolytes. Same is true for Democrats and progressives, by the way. And it's mostly because the millennial generation, be it left or right, are coming for the establishment. I'd like to make one simple point for all of you, my friends. The Democrats have moved far left. The Republicans have mostly stayed where they are. Anyone who says otherwise is not paying attention. And I'll give you some examples. Democrats and Republicans have always been opposed to illegal immigration, at least up until this past decade. Democrats are now for open borders. Republicans still oppose illegal immigration. Republicans in the 80s? Oh, yeah, we can talk about big industry wanting more illegal immigrants, tolerating it because it was cheap labor. But in my lifetime, go back to 2000s, Republicans and Democrats are both going like, we got too much illegal immigration. Now the Democrats have shifted and are open to it and want a moratorium on border crossings. Okay. They're also in California offering up free government-funded health care for non-citizens. Okay. Republicans still aren't. Republicans still want to deport non-citizens. How about abortion? I remember when I was a kid, Republicans were pro-life and said abortion should be illegal. And then, as I got older, I watched the Republicans go far right. They now want to ban abortion. What's their position? They still want to ban abortion. Well, hold on. In the 90s, they wanted to ban abortion. Today, they want to ban abortion. How do you move further right than wanting the exact same thing you've wanted for 30 years? Probably longer. The left? Well, the left in this country was in favor of restrictions, and now they want unrestricted. Okay, you get the point. Don't come to me and say the Republicans have moved far right. You want to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene and call her far right on what grounds? Because you think she believes crazy conspiracy nonsense? That's not right wing. That's just crazy conspiracy nonsense. Not that I think she really does. Maybe she did before. I don't agree with the fraud narrative. I do think that is conspiracy nonsense, but that's not right wing. There's a story out right now. Stacey Abrams wouldn't shut up about voter fraud. The left, it's just like whoever says it, it's whoever wants power. All right. Some may be more right than others and whatever, but the point is, you can't come out and claim the right is extreme when you pushed the exact same thing 3 years before they did. So now, what do we have? Marjorie Taylor Greene is a populist nationalist. They call her far right. What far right positions does she have? Honestly, I don't know. Her positions on cultural issues are the same as conservatives. In fact, probably a little bit left from where the Republicans used to be. They say, Mitt Romney's a left-wing Republican. No, he's not. He's just considered an establishment shill. Nobody considers him left-wing. Is that it? Does the left think adhering to the authority is what makes you left-wing? I think so. They say, the goal of turning the election into a contrast may be straightforward, but the execution is another matter entirely. Previous efforts to reframe the conversation have failed as the White House has been overtaken by outside forces, leaving the president unable to stay on message. Oh, is that it? White House aides insisted that surrogate talking points are sent almost daily, but the lack of coordination has left outside officials frustrated. In particular, of late, Democrats felt empty-handed when asked to defend the administration's position on voting rights, the president's legislative agenda, and his decision to rescind Title 42, Trump-era directive allowing expulsion of migrants seeking asylum. There has also been frustration in the White House and among some outside groups about the lack of cover and political push from the Democratic National Committee. The move by Cedric Richmond, a White House senior advisor, to leave the administration and become senior advisor to the DNC was interpreted as a sign by many as an effort by the White House to get more control over the party. We'll move down here. But the White House has renewed hope it could change the conversation. Biden aides have been delighted to watch growing division within the GOP. And they go on to mention January 6th, which I think is ridiculous. Biden advisors have also tried to game out this week the possibility of one particular October surprise. Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter raised the chance that Trump could be reinstated to the social media platform, where he and more than 80 million followers before being banned in the wake of the January 6th riot had more than 80 million. Musk has said he would allow Trump to return. And while the ex-president has claimed he doesn't want back on, the White House does not believe him. The consensus among Biden aides about Trump's possible return, it could cut both ways. While the former president would eat up an extraordinary amount of political oxygen, it's also possible that he would push the big lie or feud with fellow Republicans and damage the GOP's otherwise strong chances of regaining at least one House of Congress. The more the election becomes about Trump, the better the Democrats' chances become, many in Biden's orbit believe. I think Biden's orbit is correct. I think they are absolutely correct. If Donald Trump comes back to the platform, the Democrats will see a boon. They will come out and they will say, it's happening again. The fascists are coming back. We were winning, but now they're bringing back Trump. That is not an argument to say Trump should not be on the platform. I'm just saying, if you believe in the principle and Donald Trump is allowed to be on the platform, rest assured the Democrats will weaponize it. And boy, do they need that weapon. If there's anything that could unite Democrats, far left to moderate, it is Donald Trump. And for what reason, I don't understand. You'd think these progressive leftists would be like, oh, wait, no, not Trump. Because Trump is just obliterating the establishment. When Trump came in, the Democrats went insane. You'd think the progressives would want Donald Trump in office because it destroys the Democratic establishment and allows progressives to take over. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. With or without Trump. Millennials live very different lives than the previous generation. And I think that may be one of the big issues that's confusing to most people. If you look at the people who watch Tucker Carlson, they tend to be older. The average cable TV viewer is in their 60s. So when we talk about people watching CNN, we're mostly talking about old people. The problem I see, though, is where are people like Hassan getting their news from? Now, that's the weird thing to me. Now, he's a younger guy, the most prominent streamer on the left. Where does he get his news from? I've watched some of his shows, mainstream corporate press, but it's just interesting. You use you can say I got ground news up here, ground.news, showing you that the story about Joe Biden split evenly between left, right, and center. Everybody's talking about it. Joe Biden wants Elon Musk to take the platform back. He wants Trump back in. He wants that weapon. If you use their service, you can do a bias checker. If you check my bias, you'll see that Tim Pool, I think 53% of the stories I interact with are left-wing stories. And then you've got, about 25% is centrist and around 25% is conservative. I don't really engage a lot of right-wing stories. And I think that's actually interesting because I don't know. That's not something I do intentionally. I just go on there. But I think it makes sense when you look at the polls. Moderates tend to get 2/3 of their news from left-wing sources and the rest from conservative sources, and conservatives are inverted. But people like Vosh or Hassan get almost all of their news from left-wing sources, so they're not fact-checking or challenging any of their ideas. Thus, they get things wrong. Thus, when I say something like Joe Biden was doing an illicit deal in Ukraine and got the prosecutor fired to protect his son, they say that never happened. And then when you show them all the evidence, it's undeniable. But they just don't see it because they don't do any of the groundwork. Joe Biden needs that boogeyman to rally both young and old. And I think it might work. But my opinion is that progressives should be like, oh no, not Trump. Quick, vote for Trump. Let him get in and just stampede through the establishment. Well, I pointed out what Mike Cernovich said. Allowing him back on would help the Democrats. But let me show you what's currently happening right now. And let's throw some criticism towards that shadow crew. I'll give you a warning. Lee Camp says in the past weeks, PayPal has cut off great outlets like Mint Press News. YouTube has banned my show, Redacted Tonight, and others. Patreon deleted accounts of indie journalists. This is why I'll be moving to anti-censorship platform Locals support my work. Lee Camp is a leftist. He's going on Dave Rubin's platform. I wouldn't be surprised if Lee Camp heads over to Rumble because he won't get banned there for voicing his opinion opposing the war. We also have the Disinformation Board, which is in response, in my opinion, for the most part, to what's happening with Elon Musk. But I want to point out PayPal. When we hear about this group, PayPal's banning Lee Camp and these, not him personally, but these other outlets. We also have Consortium News was also banned by PayPal. Why should we assume that a platform set up by Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, or who are largely involved in it, is going to defend our rights? All right. I don't know who currently is in charge over at PayPal. And maybe Peter Thiel and Elon Musk don't really have any control in that system anymore. Maybe they long sold it, now it's controlled by the institutional left. All right, well, there you go. But if they do, I would say to Elon and Peter, figure out why they were shut down, reinstate them. They should not be banned for what? They were news outlets who had their private services shuttered. I fear it's a real possibility that they do the same to us. We're working on the infrastructure behind the scenes. Hopefully, we're going to have some big announcements this week. But I don't just blindly trust Elon Musk. I'm happy to see what he's doing, but just like Donald Trump, you want to let a bull in to rampage through the ivory tower, and I'm going to sit back and be like, no, wait, don't. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to do anything about it. Like, come on in, buddy. You want to sit up in that tower? These billionaire elites in Silicon Valley, looking out their window with their pinkies out, drinking their Chardonnay and laughing. Their Dom Perignon, eating their filet mignons. Yeah, I know how to say filet mignon. It's a joke. They're sitting up there looking down at us, saying, it's a big club and you ain't in it. And the first thing we saw was Donald Trump. He was the bull. They look down, they look out that window and they see a whole bunch of the townspeople and they got a bull leading up towards the door and they're like, no, what are you doing? The bull kicks the door in, rampages up their ivory tower and they're like, our prestige and our elitism is being trampled over by this uncouth animal. And it was funny to watch. I know I enjoyed it. And then they kicked the bull out. A bunch of these leftists were like, the left and the Democrats all teamed up, and these peasants on the ground standing by Bernie Sanders were like, hey, you get that bull out of the ivory tower. And it's like, why? Why are you mad about this? Bernie can go in afterwards. I don't care. Just get rid of those people. I'm not the biggest fan of Bernie these days, but Bernie was cheering him on. All right, fine. Don't let him in. So they take control of their ivory tower, and along comes Elon Musk, and he just buys the ivory tower outright. Or he buys one of the components of their palace. And they're like, no, you can't do that. Like, actually, he can. Good. Open the door. Let Elon muck about. Elon Musk may muck about. Do I think we should rely on a billionaire? No. Do I think it's a good thing he's buying the platform? Sure. I mean, how much worse could it really get? So good. Have at it, buddy. Do your thing. And in the meantime, we'll sit back and continually question what's going on with our government. Joe Biden, laughing. Gas is up, rent is up, food is up. That was the joke from Trevor Noah. Good for Trevor Noah for making the joke. Biden laughs. I don't know what Biden is supposed to do. I mean, just sit there and roll your eyes he'd look worse if he was guilty. It's the only thing he could have done. He could have pretended not to hear anything. Huh? What did you say? I didn't hear it. That would have been his best bet because people would be like, oh, that's deranged old Joe. Instead, he laughs at this and people are like, dude, it's kind of messed up that he's laughing when we're talking about the economy falling apart. Here we go. Diesel is at record highs. U.S. aid says food shortages are coming and never let a good crisis go to waste. Bird flu is prompting chickens into lockdown from Pennsylvania to France. No wonder I couldn't get my chicken wings. Man, I got chickens, but not enough. Actually, I think we have 50 chickens now. So what? We kill 10 of them and we get 20 wings? I guess you can get 20 thighs out of that too. Sure. What is it? You kill 10 of them? Yeah, well, we got to wait for them to grow up. Across the board, bad things are happening in this country. We need a way to speak about these things, to challenge them. So it is a good thing that Elon Musk is stepping up and doing something. Otherwise, all of this stuff that would be getting bad, they would just keep censoring it. Here we go. Chesapeake Fire responds to industrial fire at Purdue Farms facility. Really? Isn't Purdue, don't they do chicken? What do they do here? Soybean processing tank. Two stories. The first is the conspiracy theory that someone is destroying these refineries and things like that. I don't believe it. I never did. Timcast.com ran a story Because I said, hey guys, take a look at this, you know, sent it to the newsroom. And I said, there's this meme going around about all these factories being damaged in fires. And I said, make sure we include in this that our analysis as a note. It's possible fires happen all the time at these places. We just don't cover them and someone just noticed it now and thinks it's a new phenomenon. But I think the real story here is, so according to Tucker Carlson's reporting, there actually are way more fires last year and this year than the previous years, particularly this year, considering we're only 4 months in, going on 5 months. Here's what I think. I think our industrial systems are in decay. I think our infrastructure is in decay. I think our economy is in decay. I think it's being driven into the ground and it's imploding right before our very eyes. You don't need a conspiracy theory to talk about why fires are starting at facilities when they're being unkempt, when they are unkempt. Perhaps people just aren't fixing them. Perhaps our infrastructure is crumbling and has been for some time, and perhaps there's no one to rely on. There you go. And I gotta tell you, man, if there was any sign of cultural decay, it would be White House officials weigh income limits for student loan forgiveness. Interesting. What is this all about? Student loan forgiveness, huh? So apparently, the administration is considering various ways to forgive some student loan debt through executive action. In recent weeks, senior Biden aides have examined limiting the relief to people who earned less than either $125,000 or $150,000 as individuals, or $250,000 to $300,000. Let me just slow that down for a second. Somebody who makes $300,000 a year. You got a married couple. Husband's making $300,000 a year. Wife ain't working because she doesn't have to be working. This dude's going to get free money? Incredible. The Biden administration has realized they're going to bribe people. But guess what? Democrat voters aren't the working class anymore. That's changing. So you're going to have to bribe the top 5% of income earners. Couples making $300,000. They're almost the 1%. And you know what the funny thing is? Somebody who's been making $300,000 for 10 years and has saved that up might actually have a net worth in the millions, especially if they've been investing properly, especially if they've been investing in property. Now you've got people who are quite literally the 1%, and Joe Biden's like, I need their vote, so I'm going to give you 10 grand for free. Why would someone who makes $150,000 a year need student debt relief? Now that does not make sense. What are they doing? Robbing from the poor to give to the rich, because the taxes are going to come from working class people predominantly. I think it's absolutely fascinating. This is where we are currently at. You know, this country's falling apart. When we sit back and cross our fingers and hope a billionaire will come and rescue us from the lack of free speech and the domination of the cultural left, the government has learned it can just bribe people from tax coffers, and it's bribing the wealthy. Wonderful. Now, to be fair, if it's only 5%, how much of the vote can he really get? 2.5? Because, you know, half of them aren't going to, well, not even that. Let's just say like 1.6, because you're going to get a mix between Democrats, moderates, and Republicans. But that's just fascinating. You mean to tell me that there's going to be somebody who makes $300,000 a year, married, and they're going to be like, I sure could use 10 grand for free. I'll vote for Biden. He said it would be lower than 50K. And they say the administration officials have signaled there will be at least 10,000. So it could be more. It could literally be $50,000 in free cash for someone making $300,000. Bravo, Biden administration. And it'll work. People will vote for him. They're going to be like, don't know, don't care, free money. From my pocket? You betcha. Yeah, well, this country is falling apart for more reasons than the ones I've just considered. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.